The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with light and music. Thousands of delegates from across the galaxy had gathered to celebrate the 500th anniversary of the Eternal Accord. It was the longest peace in galactic history, and everyone knew that humanity had made it possible. General Park Do-yeon stood at the center of the celebration. He was an old man now, with gray hair and tired eyes, but his back was still straight and his voice was still strong. He had spent his entire life building bridges between species. He had ended wars with words instead of weapons. The galaxy called him the Peacemaker, and tonight they honored him. Commander Lee Yuna stood 3 steps behind him, as she always did. She had served as his aide for 15 years. She knew his habits, his thoughts, and his dreams. She also knew his fears. Do-yeon often told her that peace was fragile, like thin ice over deep water. One crack, and everything would fall through. The Velthrani ambassador, a tall creature with purple skin and 4 arms, approached the general with a drink in each hand. His name was Kreth, and he smiled with too many teeth. "General Park," Kreth said loudly, so everyone could hear. "The Velthrani Dominion congratulates humanity on this historic day. May the peace last another 500 years. Do-yeon bowed his head politely. "Thank you, Ambassador. Peace requires effort from all of us." Yuna watched Kreth carefully. Something felt wrong. The ambassador's eyes kept moving, looking at the exits, at the ceiling, at the shadows. She had learned long ago to trust her instincts. The music swelled. Delegates laughed and danced. The celebration continued. Then came the shot. It was a plasma bolt, bright blue and impossibly fast. It came from somewhere above, from the observation gallery that circled the Great Hall. It struck General Park Do-yeon in the chest. Time seemed to stop. Yuna caught him as he fell. His blood was warm on her hands. Around them, the hall exploded into chaos. Delegates screamed and ran. Security forces shouted orders. But Yuna heard none of it. She looked into Do-yeon's eyes and saw the light fading. "Yuna," he whispered. His voice was so weak she had to lean close. "The coordinates: 37.5665, 126.9780. Remember them. Sir, don't speak. Help is coming. No." He grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "They forgot. They all forgot. But we remember. We always remember." His grip loosened. His eyes closed. The Peacemaker was dead. Yuna held him for a long moment. Then she gently laid him down and stood up. Her uniform was soaked with blood. Her face was empty. Ambassador Kreth was still in the hall. He had not run. He stood on a raised platform, and his smile was gone. In its place was something cold and proud. "The Velthrani Dominion claims responsibility for this action," he announced. His voice echoed through the sudden silence. "Humanity has grown too powerful. They control too much. They influence too many decisions. This treaty protected them while they spread like a disease. No more." He looked directly at Yuna. "We are not afraid of humans. Your general is dead. Your peace is dead. Accept this, and perhaps we will show mercy." Yuna said nothing. She simply looked at him, memorizing his face, burning it into her memory. Then she turned and walked away. The message reached Earth in minutes. The Ansible network carried the news across human space at faster than light speeds. On every colony, on every station, on every ship, humans stopped what they were doing and listened. Admiral Cho Min-hee received the news in her office in Seoul. She was 72 years old, but her mind was sharp as ever. She had known Do-yeon since they were cadets together, back when they were young and foolish and believed they could change the galaxy. They had changed it. And now this. Her aide showed her the recording of the assassination. She watched it once, twice, 3 times. Her face showed nothing. "Admiral?" Her aide asked nervously. "What are your orders?" Minhee was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm and cold. "Wake the sleeping tigers." The aide's face went pale. "Admiral, that protocol hasn't been used in 500 years. "I know." Minhee stood and walked to her window. Outside, the city lights sparkled in the darkness. Millions of people living their peaceful lives, unaware of what was coming. "Send the signal. Priority Alpha. All channels." Across human space, things began to change. On Mars, families received messages calling their parents and grandparents to report for duty. On the colony worlds, reservists checked communication devices they hadn't touched in decades. On Earth, museums received orders to close indefinitely. The orders came with a simple code phrase: "Remember the promise." Every human knew what it meant. They had learned it as children, whispered it at funerals, carved it on monuments. It was the promise humanity made to itself after the First Contact War, the terrible conflict that had nearly destroyed them and had nearly destroyed everyone else. We will choose peace. We will teach peace. We will build peace. But we will never forget what we are. And if peace is taken from us, we will remember Dot in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kreth celebrated his victory. The other species watched with a mixture of fear and confusion. Some were pleased humanity had grown too influential, and perhaps this would humble them. Others were worried. They knew the old stories, but Kreth laughed and drank and boasted. Humanity was soft now, he said. They had forgotten how to fight. Their military was ceremonial. Their weapons were toys. In a week, his fleet would reach Earth. In a month, humanity would surrender. In a year, they would be just another subject. Species of the Velthrani Dominion, that he did not. Notice the human diplomats quietly. Leaving the station, he did not notice the human trade ships changing course. He did not. Notice the silence spreading across human space. Like a held breath before a scream, Commander Lee Yuna stood alone on a transport ship, watching the stars pass by. In her pocket was a piece of paper with coordinates written on it. In her heart was cold fire. The 500-year peace was over. Humanity remembered.
The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Within 3 days of the assassination, every human world went silent. Trade stopped. Communication ended. Ships returned to port and stayed there. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. The Galactic Council called emergency meetings. Ambassadors demanded answers. But there were no human diplomats left to answer. They had all gone home. Ambassador Kim Ji-soo was the last to leave. She stood before the council one final time, her hands folded and her face calm. She was a small woman with silver hair and kind eyes, but today those eyes held something the delegates had never seen before. "The Velthrani Dominion has broken the Eternal Accord," she said simply. "They have murdered our peacemaker. They have declared war on humanity." Kreth laughed from his seat. "War? What war? You have no army. You have no weapons. For 500 years, you have done nothing but talk." Jisoo looked at him. She did not smile. She did not frown. She simply looked, and something in that look made Kreth's laughter die. "You are correct, Ambassador. For 500 years, we chose peace. We taught our children to build instead of destroy. We turned our shipyards into schools. We buried our weapons so deep that our grandchildren forgot they existed." She paused. "But we did not forget. We never forget." She turned to address the full council. "Humanity is withdrawing from galactic society. We will defend our space. We will protect our people. And we will hold the Velthrani Dominion responsible for what they have done." An alien delegate from the Korath Federation spoke up. "Ambassador Kim, Surely there is room for negotiation? The Velthrani acted alone. The rest of us, the rest of you, Jisoo interrupted, watched. For 500 years, the Velthrani conquered and enslaved 12 species. They built their empire on blood and suffering. And the galaxy did nothing because humanity asked for peace. We ask you to give them time to change. Her voice hardened. They did not change. And now our general is dead. Our patience is dead. She picked up a small device from the podium. This is my final message. Humanity remembers its promises. All of them. She walked out. No one tried to stop her. Far from the council station, deep beneath the mountains of Earth, something ancient was waking up. Captain Beak Sunho had never expected to command a warship. He was a historian, a professor of military studies at the Seoul Academy. He taught cadets about battles that happened centuries ago. He had never fired a weapon in his life, but his name was on a list. A very old list passed down through generations. And when the call came, he answered. The elevator took him 3 kilometers underground. When the doors opened, his breath caught in his throat. The cavern was enormous, stretching into darkness in every direction. And floating in that darkness, held by ancient docking clamps, were ships. Not the sleek, elegant vessels humanity used for trade and diplomacy. These were something else entirely. They were warships. True warships, built for one purpose only. Captain Beak Sunho, a voice said. It was not human. It was an AI, speaking through hidden speakers. I am the tactical intelligence of the HSS Indomitable Spirit. I have been waiting for you. Sunho walked forward slowly, staring at the ship before him. It was massive, covered in armor plating and weapon ports. Its hull was scarred and patched, showing repairs from battles fought before his grandfather was born. Waiting, he managed to ask. Your family has commanded this vessel for 17 generations. Your great-grandfather, Captain Beak Junwoo, fought in the Battle of Proxima. Your ancestors sealed me in this mountain when the peace began. They said someone would come back eventually. Sunho touched the cold metal of the ship's hull. 500 years. You've been down here for 500 years. Yes, and now I am awake. There was something in the AI's voice. Something that sounded almost like hunger. The enemy has returned. What are your orders, Captain? All across Earth, similar scenes were happening. Old bunkers opened. Ancient factories came back to life. Families discovered that their quiet grandparents had secret straining knowledge. Skills that had been passed down in whispers and hidden lessons. Commander. Yuna arrived at the coordinates General Park had given her. It was a small valley in Korea, covered with flowers. At its center was a simple stone monument. She read the inscription, Here, humanity chose peace. Here, we promise to remember. This was where the Eternal Accord was first proposed. This was where Do-yeon's ancestors had stood and convinced humanity to put away its weapons. And buried beneath this peaceful garden, Yuna knew, was something the galaxy had forgotten. She entered the access code, the coordinates themselves. The ground trembled. A hidden door opened. Inside was a small room filled with screens and controls. And on those screens were numbers. Fleet counts. Weapon stockpiles. Hidden shipyards. Everything humanity had built in secret, disguised as mining operations, research stations, and asteroid colonies. 50,000 warships. 200 million trained reserves. Weapons that had been improved and refined for 5 centuries. Waiting for the day they would be needed, Yuna sat down at the main console. Her hands were shaking. Not with fear, but with something else. The galaxy thought humanity had forgotten how to fight. They thought 500 years of peace had made humans weak. They were wrong. Humanity had been preparing. Quietly. Patiently. Hoping they would never need to use what they built. But they were ready. She opened a communication channel to Admiral Cho Min-hee. Admiral. I found it. The General's legacy. On the screen, Min-hee's old face was hard as stone. Good. Wake them all. The Velthrani want to see what humanity is capable of. She leaned forward. Let's remind the galaxy why they signed that treaty in the first place. In the darkness of space, the Velthrani invasion fleet was already moving toward Earth. 40,000 ships, the largest armada in galactic history. Admiral Kreth commanded from his flagship, dreaming of glory and conquest. He had no idea what was waiting for him. The Velthrani fleet entered the Sol system like a storm of metal and fire. 40,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons. Admiral Kreth stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. This would be easy. This would be glorious, report, he commanded. His sensor officer studied the screens. Admiral, we are detecting a human defense line near the orbit of Mars. Approximately 50 ships. Kreth laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge. 50. That is their mighty defense. Their great awakening? He shook his head. Humans, they talk so much about strength, but in the end, they are nothing. All ships forward. Destroy them. Lieutenant Han Yunji stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the Velthrani fleet approach. She was 26 years old. She had grown up in a world of peace. She had never seen combat, never fired a weapon, never watched someone die. But she knew the stories. Her grandmother had told her late at night when the lights were low. Stories about the old days, before the peace. Stories about what humanity had done. What humanity could do? Her grandmother had served on a warship long before Yunji was born. She had kept her old uniform in a box, along with medals and memories. When the time comes, her grandmother had said, "You will know what to do. It's in our blood. It's in our bones. We never forget." Now Yuniji understood. "Captain," she said to her commanding officer. "The Velthrani are in range." Captain Moonsira nodded. She was older than Youngji, but not by much. None of them had experience. But all of them had secret training passed down through families, updated every generation. They knew their ships. They knew their weapons. They knew themselves. "Signal the fleet," Moon said calmly. "Activate the belt." The asteroid belt had always been valuable. Rich in minerals, perfect for mining. For 500 years, human corporations had operated there, extracting resources, building stations, doing boring industrial work. That was what the galaxy believed. The truth was different. When the signal came, the asteroids moved. Not drifting, not tumbling, moving with purpose. Hidden engines fired. Camouflage plates fell away. And suddenly the belt was not a belt anymore. It was a wall. A wall of weapons. Thousands of platforms activated, each one armed with railguns, plasma cannons, and missile launchers. Defense satellites unfolded like metal flowers. And among them, hidden for centuries, were the swarm autonomous drones that could think, adapt, and multiply. The first Velthrani wave never knew what hit them. 300 ships vanished in a storm of fire. Railgun rounds punched through their hulls like needles through paper. Plasma bolts melted their armor. Missiles found their weak points and tore them apart. Admiral Kreth's smile disappeared. "What is this?" he demanded. Where did these weapons come from? His officers had no answers. The sensors were going crazy. Targets everywhere. Weapons everywhere. And the human ships, the 50 they had laughed at, were moving. Fast. Too fast. "Admiral," someone screamed. "They're flanking us." The human ships were not like the elegant vessels the galaxy knew. These were old designs brought back from the grave. Heavy armor. Massive guns. Built not for diplomacy, but for one thing only. Destruction. Captain Beak Sunho stood on the bridge of the indomitable spirit and watched the battle unfold. His ship's AI was feeding him data faster than he could process, but he didn't need to process it. The AI was doing that. All he needed to do was decide. "Target their command ships," he ordered. "Cut off the head." The spirit's main cannon charged. It was an old weapon, designed in an age when humanity fought for survival. The engineers who built it had one goal: make it powerful enough to end battles quickly. The cannon fired. Across the void, a Velthrani battlecruiser simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, leading a squadron. The next moment it was dust. Kreth watched in horror as his fleet began to die. Pull back, he ordered. Regroup at the outer planets. But the humans were not letting them go. The swarm was everywhere now, small drones latching onto Velthrani ships and tearing them apart piece by piece. The defense platforms kept firing, a constant rain of death. And the human warships were advancing, pushing the Velthrani back step by step in 4 hours. The Velthrani lost 3,000 ships. They had not even reached Mars. Lieutenant Yunji's ship took a hit. Alarms screamed. Fire erupted on the lower decks. But she stayed at her station, hands steady, eyes focused. Around her, her crewmates did the same. No panic. No fear. Just cold, quiet determination. Damage report, Captain Moon demanded. Engines at 60%. Weapons still operational? Then keep firing. They kept firing. By the end of the first day, the Velthrani fleet had been cut in half. 20,000 ships destroyed or disabled. Admiral Kreth was still alive, but he was no longer smiling. He was no longer boasting. He was running. How? He whispered, staring at the tactical display. How is this possible? They were farmers, teachers, merchants. They haven't fought a war in 500 years. His science officer approached nervously. Admiral, I've been analyzing their tactics, their weapons, their ship designs, and the officer swallowed. They haven't been idle, sir. For 5 centuries, they've been preparing, improving, perfecting. Every technology they've shared with the galaxy, they kept the better version for themselves. Their medicine, their computers, their engines, all of it. They gave us their old technology. They kept the new. Kreth felt cold. You're saying we've been fighting the humans they wanted us to see. The peaceful, helpful, friendly humans. The officer's voice trembled. These are the real humans. The ones they locked away. The ones that scared them so much, they chose peace just to keep them sleeping. Far away on Earth, Admiral Cho Minhei received the battle reports. She read them carefully, nodded once, and then closed her eyes. Phase 1 complete, she said quietly. The galaxy is watching. Now they remember. She looked at the stars through her window. Now they remember why they should be afraid. The counterattack began on a Tuesday. Commander Shin Tai-woo stood on the bridge of the HSS Silent Thunder.
Watching his fleet move into formation.
300 ships, each one crewed by humans who had trained in secret, who had waited their whole lives for this moment. They were not angry. They were not excited. They were simply ready. His orders came directly from Admiral Cho Minhei, and they were very clear. No civilian targets, she had told him. No occupied worlds. No atrocities. We are not monsters. We will never become what we're fighting. But military installations? Fleet yards. The tools they use to conquer and enslave? She had paused. Remove them from existence. Tai-woo understood. This was not about revenge. This was about teaching a lesson so clear, so absolute, that the galaxy would never forget. The Velthrani Dominion had built their empire on cruelty. They had conquered 12 species, enslaving billions. Their military bases were scattered across 200 star systems. Their fleet yards produced ships constantly, feeding their hunger for expansion. In 1 week, humanity destroyed them all. The attacks came without warning. Human ships appeared from nowhere. They had developed a new type of faster-than-light travel, kept secret for centuries, and struck before the Velthrani could respond. Shipyards exploded. Weapons factories burned. Military stations vanished in balls of fire. But the civilian populations were untouched. When human forces took control of a system, they broadcast the same message to every inhabited world. Stay in your homes. Do not resist. We are not here for you. We are here for those who rule you. On the planet Velthran Prime, the homeworld of the Dominion, panic spread through the ruling council. Reports came in every hour, each one worse than the last. Their fleet was scattered. Their supply lines were cut. Their allies had abandoned them because the Velthrani had called for help. No one had answered. The Korath Federation said they were neutral. The Metheny Collective said they needed time to consider. The Dreth Assembly simply did not respond at all. Species that had feared the Velthrani now pretended not to know them. But more than that, they remembered. The old records had been buried, hidden, classified. But now, species were digging them up. They were reading about the first contact war, the conflict that had happened before the Eternal Accord, the war where humanity had fought against a coalition of 15 species, and one, not just one, devastated. 2 of those species no longer existed. Not because humanity had killed them all, but because they had been defeated so completely that they chose to leave known space rather than face humans again. They had gathered their people, their ships, everything they owned, and fled to the edges of the galaxy. The others had sued for peace. They had begged for it. And humanity, exhausted and horrified by its own power, had agreed. The Eternal Accord was born from that horror humanity's fear of itself as much as the galaxy's fear of humanity. Now the galaxy watched the Velthrani being dismantled, and they remembered why the treaty had been signed. Commander. Hoyeri landed on Velthrin Prime alone. Her shuttle touched down in the central plaza of the capital city, right in front of the High Council building. Thousands of Velthrani soldiers surrounded her. Weapon platforms aimed at her ship. Snipers watched from every rooftop. She walked out without armor, without weapons, without guards. The Velthrani watched in confusion. Was this a surrender? A negotiation? A trap? Hoyeri walked calmly through the plaza, past the soldiers, up the steps of the council building. Every weapon that targeted her failed. Rifles would not fire. Missiles would not launch. Energy cannons simply shut down. Human technology had spent 500 years advancing in secret, and electronic warfare was one of their specialties. She entered the council chamber and found the High Council waiting. They were impressive creatures. Tall and strong, covered in ceremonial armor, but their eyes showed fear. They had watched their empire crumble in days. They had watched their invincible fleet become dust. They knew they were beaten. Hoyeri stood before them and spoke. "You killed our peacemaker," she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "General Park Doyon spent 60 years convincing humanity that the galaxy deserved our mercy. He believed in you. He believed everyone could change. He believed that peace was worth protecting." She paused. He shot him in the heart at his own celebration. The High Counselor, a massive Velthrani named Threk, tried to speak. "We can negotiate. We can pay reparations. You can listen," Hoyeri interrupted. She placed a small device on the council table. A hologram appeared images from Earth. Children in classrooms, watching recordings of the assassination. Parents comforting crying sons and daughters. Young people asking questions their elders struggled to answer. "These are our children," Hoyeri said. "They grew up believing in peace. They grew up thinking the galaxy was their friend. They trusted you, and you showed them that trust was foolish." She looked at each council member in turn. "In 60 years, those children will command our fleets. They will lead our colonies. They will decide humanity's place in the galaxy." Her voice hardened. "I suggest you consider very carefully what lessons you want them to learn." The High Counselor stared at the images. Children, innocent faces. And in those faces something was changing. Softness becoming stone. Trust becoming suspicion. Peace becoming something else. "What do you want?" Threk whispered. "We want you to understand," Hoyeri replied. "General Park kept humanity gentle. He reminded us every day why we chose peace. He was our conscience, our restraint, our hope." She leaned forward. "You killed him, and now there is no one left to speak for mercy." She turned and walked toward the door. "Our terms will be delivered tomorrow. I suggest you accept them." She left the same way she came, untouched, unstoppable. Behind her, the High Council sat in silence, finally understanding the terrible mistake they had made. They had not attacked a weak species, pretending to be strong. They had attacked a strong species pretending to be weak, and now the pretending was over. The war lasted 11 months. It felt longer to those who fought it and shorter to those who watched from afar. But in the end, the result was never in doubt. The Velthrani dominion did not fall. Humanity did not destroy them. Instead, something more profound happened. They were reduced. Their conquered territories were freed. Their slave species were liberated. Their mighty fleet was dismantled ship by ship, and their leaders stood trial, not for attacking humanity, but for the crimes they had committed against others. This was humanity's choice. They could have burned Velthrin prime to ash. They could have erased the species from existence, as they had done to others long ago. But they did not. "We are not executioners, Admiral," Cho-Min-He said during the final campaign. "We are teachers. And some lessons require the student to survive." The trials were broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time, species heard the full truth about the Velthrani dominion, the massacres, the slavery, the cruelty that had been hidden behind diplomatic smiles. The 12 species they had conquered testified. They showed the scars. They named the dead. And the galaxy watched and remembered and felt ashamed because they had known. They had always known. And they had done nothing because humanity had asked for peace. And peace was easier than justice. The signing of the new accord happened on the anniversary of General Park Do-yeon's assassination. It was held in the same great hall where he had died, now rebuilt and renamed in his honor. Delegates from every species attended. The mood was different this time, quieter, more careful. More aware, Admiral Cho-Min-Hai represented humanity. She was 73 now, older and more tired than she had been a year ago. The war had taken something from her, something she would never get back. But she stood straight, and her voice was steady. 500 years ago, she began, humanity made a choice. We had won the first contact war. We had proven ourselves the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We could have built an empire. We could have ruled. Instead, we chose peace. She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of delegates from 100 different worlds. We chose peace not because we were weak. We chose it because we had looked into ourselves and seen what we were capable of. It frightened us. It haunted us. We decided that if we could not control the darkness inside us, we would at least try to keep it sleeping. She gestured to the empty chair beside her, where General Park had once sat. Do-yeon believed in this. He dedicated his life to it. He truly thought the galaxy could grow beyond violence, beyond conquest, beyond the old ways. He thought if we just gave everyone enough time, they would learn. Her voice grew heavy. Oh, maybe he was naive. Maybe we all were. She was silent for a moment. But we will try again. The delegates stirred. Some looked confused. Others looked hopeful. A few looked afraid. We will teach our children peace again. We will bury our weapons again. We will try to be the species Do-yeon believed we could be. She paused. But we will forget nothing. Let this be remembered by every species on every world for all time. She straightened her back and let her voice ring through the hall. Humanity keeps its promises, the promise of peace and the promise of consequences. Do not mistake our kindness for weakness. Do not mistake our patience for blindness. We are watching. We are waiting. And if this accord is broken again, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. The document was signed in silence. Each species added their mark, their seal, their pledge. When it was done, the delegates left quickly, barely speaking. There was no celebration, no music, no dancing. The galaxy had learned that some things were not worth celebrating. Commander Lee Yuna did not attend the signing. She had her own ceremony to perform. The valley in Korea was quiet in the autumn light. Leaves were falling, red and gold, covering the ground in a soft carpet. The stone monument still stood at the center, unchanged by the war. But now there was something new beside it. A grave. General Park Do-yeon had been buried here, the place where he had first dreamed of peace. His headstone was simple, his name, his dates. And for words, he believed in us. Why, UNA knelt before the grave and placed flowers against the stone. They were white lilies, his favorite. She had remembered. It's over, she said quietly. The war is over. The Velthrani are contained. The freed species are rebuilding. The galaxy is different now, quieter, more careful. She touched the cold stone. I wish you could have seen it. I wish you could have been there when the last treaty was signed. They used your words, you know. The opening paragraph of the new accordats from your speech at the 400th anniversary. About how peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding. Tears fell down her cheeks, but she smiled. We tried, Doyan. We tried so hard to be what you wanted us to be. And we failed. We woke the old darkness. We became the species we feared. She wiped her eyes. But we also stopped. We chose to stop. We could have destroyed them all. And we didn't. It has to mean something, right? She stood and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, the fleet was returning home. Ships that had brought death were now carrying soldiers back to their families. Weapons were being sealed away again, buried deep, waiting for a day that might never come. We'll keep trying, she told the grave. That's what you would have wanted. We'll teach the children about peace. We'll tell them about Youth, a general who believed in a better galaxy, even when the galaxy proved him wrong. She touched the headstone one last time. Rest now. You earned it. She walked away through the falling leaves. Behind her, the monument stood silent. Keeping watch over the place where humanity had made its promise, the stars turned overhead. Somewhere on 1,000 worlds, children were learning about the war. They were asking their parents why it had happened and what it meant. And whether it would happen again, the parents did not know how to answer, but they taught them the same lesson humanity had always taught its young. The lesson that had survived 500 years of peace and 11 months of war. Remember who we are. Remember what we can do. Remember why we choose not to do it. And never, ever give anyone a reason to wake us up again. The end.